Good evening and welcome to Inside Without Now, a live webinar with Refuse Fascism. I am Sam, an organizer with Refuse Fascism, and I am so glad that you are here with us. We're talking tonight about this being our time, not Trump's, not his fascist goons. We're getting organized to go out and bring forward the millions into the streets who are needed to stop this fascist regime and the fascist program that the Trump-Pence regime is hammering into place. I want to ask you to invite everyone, host a watch party if you're on Facebook. Everybody who was tweeting for days, Trump resign now. Everyone who was sickened by the revelations that came forward through Bob Woodward, not surprised, but sickened by the monstrous, murderous actions of the Trump-Pence regime. Invite all of those people to come in and be part of this. We are going out and we are organizing all those who are sick at heart, all of those who do not want to be collaborators with a fascist America. We're bringing them in, and we are doing this now because people need to be in the streets now. Trump is stealing the election now. He's unleashing his fascist shock troops now. And if every attempt by this regime is met now with people in the streets demanding Trump-Pence out now, if every time that protest is repressed, people come back in even bigger numbers, if every time they try a new fascist move or program, they're met with larger protests demanding their ouster, in nonviolent, sustained mass protests, we could force a different political equation going into November, constraining Trump's ability to easily postpone or subvert the election. And we would already be mobilized and prepared if he did so on election day. So I'm so glad to be here with you tonight as part of the 60 days of nonviolent struggle, to organize, to mobilize, to show our determination to drive out this regime. We launched it September 5th, and if you were out with us in the streets, welcome. And if you heard about it after that, welcome to you as well. We're gonna get started in just a moment. I'm gonna let you know a little bit about what's gonna happen tonight. We're gonna show a video that shows a little bit of the voices and sounds that were launched as part of the launching. I think the video changed. We might want to fix that, Mark. Some of the voices that were heard September 5th, the diversity, the unity, people that really were understanding the urgency that we need to act on. We're going to show that video, and we're going to hear part of the speech that Sansara Taylor, a co-initiator, made as part of that video. It was produced by the RNL show, and we're grateful to have this as a tool going forward. We're then going to hear from Andy Z, a co-initiator of Refuse Fascism, who's going to talk about what was accomplished on September 5th, but more on the bigger challenges to come. And then we're going to talk about how to go forward and what this fight for the future that we are waging right now is going to look like, and how you can play a part, and how we need you to play a part in that. So that is our plan. We're going to give some concrete steps, but we want to hear your ideas, and we hope that you will have a lot to share in the chat. So welcome, and I'm going to ask Mark to play that video.
Here and now, we pledge to unite in our millions, rising together in nonviolent resistance to stop a great horror. We pledge to stay in the streets, overcoming fear and uncertainty until this American fascism is brought to a halt. We demand Trump, Pence out now.
Trump, Pence out now.
We will not stop until they're gone.
This is history in the making, like seriously so important, and people are gonna ask, what did you do, you know?
Ending fascism would be one step closer to helping mitigate the climate emergency, one step closer to stamping out white supremacy and ending a lot of the racial injustice that we have about. So for me, all of these issues are so intertwined, there's no reason not to show up.
And I'm here fighting for everybody, not just me, not just my family, but for everybody. All need to matter first, because they keep on killing us.
This is serious, and so it feels good to know that there's other people that see it too, and I think we can find strength together.
We are saying today on September 5th that we are making a living declaration, that we are uniting, we are organizing, we are determined, and we will not stop. We will keep going until we drive the Trump-Pence regime from power and stop and bring this fascist assault to a halt.
Just listen to the words of Miles Taylor, the former head of the Department of Homeland Security who served under Trump. He said, "There are people serving very close to the president that have told me verbatim, we should expect, quote, shock and awe if the president wins a second term."
If we lose democracy, we lose everything. No Medicare for all, no defunding the police, no progressive policies whatsoever.
They want to force all women to have children against their will. And listen well, there is nothing funny about Donald Trump's so-called joke when he said Mike Pence wants to hang all the gay people.
Well, it is dangerous. This is like a tipping point. You can feel it. He has vigilantes, literal vigilante people coming out murdering protesters.
Another 4 years of this, man, we're going to be in concentration camps again. We're going to be out there picking cotton again if we don't stop them.
It's not just going to be bad, it's going to be a nightmare. Like everything that we've seen in these streets, there is no defund the police in a fascist America. There is no movement for black lives that they can lock you up and break your knees and kill you in the streets. And so this is why we are calling for everybody, every group, the environmental rights group, Black Lives Matter, immigrants' rights, women's rights. Don't stop fighting for your individual issues, but now is the time to come together in our millions to drive out this regime.
So I'm also a civil rights lawyer with the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. So we know this administration is separating families, traumatizing children on purpose as a tactic of terror. And we're seeing and experiencing something unlike anything we've ever seen.
In the face of the farce of an impeachment trial in the Senate, Trump actually had his lawyers say that the Constitution lets him do anything he wants. Anything he wants! When you look closely and honestly at Trump's record, you realize what he means by law and order. He means Trump's law, Trump's order. That's right. And I think religious folks have to say, this doesn't represent our values.
This puffed up idiot talks tough, hiding behind an army of death and destruction that has been built up through a whole history of plunder and war and genocide and slavery. Anybody could stand behind that and talk tough. And that is all that they have. What we have is us. The masses of people in our millions who refuse to live in a fascist America.
They've been using the virus against black and brown people. They cheer on the police when they pump 7 bullets into the back of an unarmed black man's back in front of his 3 little children. They cheer and they call them heroes. Okay? We're not uniting with them. We're rising up in our millions. This is what we're calling for. Masses to rise up in our mass millions to completely overshadow them and dwarf them.
When you see a senior, please have the social distancing, even if you're young. And to the seniors here, I want to say to you, do what I do. I stick to the sides, near the sidewalk, okay? But I show up. I show up. I show up. I show up. And I bring my friends to show up to get them out of office. Trump and Pence, out now.
I understand this real fear out there, but later people are gonna ask, this is an important time. This is history in the making, like seriously so important, and people are gonna ask, what did you do, you know? Where were you? Did you help? Did you stand? What do you want to tell people in the future? What are you gonna be proud to share?
This is not a one-day show. We didn't call you out here to register that you don't like Donald Trump and then to go back home and wait to see what happened. We called you out here to be the beginning core of the force that is going to reach out to and enlist others, that's going to mobilize others, that's going to organize others to take up this 60 days of defiant resistance, to organize town halls, community speak-outs, protests, all different forms, cultural events, to go through notable points in September and to be the force in October that can bring people out into the streets day after day, night after night, in growing numbers, with the demand, Trump, Pence, out now.
October must belong to us. October must belong to us. Not Trump and not his fascist goons. So we gotta be on a mission to change this equation so that in November, he is not easily able to delay the elections or whatever other thing he may try to do.
There is beauty, there is power, and there is meaning in standing up together to stop this fascist America. Not only there's beauty and power in stopping this catastrophe for humanity, but there is beauty and power in meaning in becoming the kind of people who stand up for each other, who look out for each other, who put humanity first, not ourselves or America first. There is beauty in our diversity. There is beauty in our courage. There is beauty in our helping each other overcome their fear. If we here today promise and pledge together that we will go forward from here, we will change our lives to change what others are doing. We will overcome our own fear and uncertainty to help others overcome theirs. If we make this our mission together for the next 60 days, we can awaken and arouse a force that can bring a great gift to humanity. We can drive out a fascist America.
Thank you. So that was a beautiful video. Thank you to the RNL show for that. I want to introduce, and I want to encourage people, before I introduce Andy, I want to encourage people to go to the refusefascism.org website, and you can see more of the sights and sounds from September 5th. You can hear some of the other speeches of people uniting from diverse perspectives that speak to the great urgency in the moment to act now to stop this catastrophe, and also people speaking about the ways that we need to be acting together right now in the streets, raising this demand. And you can do that at refusefascism.org. You can see those sights and sounds. You can hear Ted Sirota's full interview, flipping the script on some frequently asked questions. And you can also see the link and listen to the podcast of some of the speeches that you may not find in the video clips. So I want to bring on Andy Z, co-initiator of Refuse Fascism and co-host host of the RNL show. And he's going to get into some of what was accomplished September 5th and more on the bigger challenges to come and the kind of action that's needed right now from everybody with a heart for humanity. So welcome, Andy.
Okay, so just give me a second to get set up here and get connected. All right, so we're ready to go, Samantha? All right. So welcome, Refuse Fascism. I'm glad to be part of the webinar. But look, here's what I have to say, and stick with me here. It's on, and it comes to this. A path was blazed on September 5th. Will you walk on that, or will you turn away? We're laced up, and we are ready. Those who took to the streets on September 5th were the first rush of a fresh stream pouring down from the mountain of the masses of people's outrage and their determination to stop all that is the Trump-Pence regime. This can and it must become a torrent over the next 60 days. Lines are drawn. Trump, Pence, their regime, their fascist base are moving. Did you know that right now, every week, there are MAGA boat rallies, car caravans, militias stalking communities, vigilantes and police and paramilitary suppressing protest and voters while they plot to mobilize all of this to intimidate at polling places while subverting the counting of absentee ballots? What was begun with each and every person who took to the streets across the country on September 5th is as precious as the first drops of water on parched earth. And now, each and all can and must be marshaled and organized so that October is our month, a month that begins sustained nonviolent protests, building in numbers and determination, so that by November, there are not just MAGA, Trump forces in the field, but instead, there is an unstoppable flood of people in the streets, committed, determined, overcoming and putting to the side their differences to unite and say in many voices, Trump, Pence, out now, to be fired at the core that not in our name will we allow another day of rule by this fascist regime, to be inspired and determined to demonstrate in word and in deed in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. Do not underestimate what we have begun. For in word and deed, September 5th posed questions that each and all of us must answer and continue to answer in word and in deed. Questions that must be put before people everywhere. What are you going to do for the next 60 days and beyond? Who are you going to be? Will you say, I didn't join those who took to the streets in nonviolent protests to demand Trump and Pence out now because I thought Biden would win and Trump was all bluster? Will you say, I didn't join the protests in the streets because Trump is just a reactionary psychopath and fascism couldn't really happen here? Will you say, I didn't join the protests in the streets because I don't want to be associated with anarchists and revolutionary communists and Marxists, because I want change, but without cost. I want the rain, but without thunder and lightning. Will you say, as some people have told us, that they didn't join the protests in the streets because they told us that life in the hood and the barrio is always hard, and we are always dogged by the system and its police. So we got to deal with things where we're at. Trump won't mean anything different for us. Well, did you know that in Germany and Eastern Europe, before the Nazis came to power, the Jewish people were oppressed and confined to ghettos? But when Hitler came to full power, it was only 8 years before they were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. Will you say, as some people have told us, that they didn't join the protests in the streets because they know that the Biden Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, and I am working for real change, ignoring the reality of what was staring me in the face, that the Trump-Pence regime and the fascist movements it leads could seriously wipe out for a long time the possibility of the kind of change I thought would come. Here too, the example of Germany is relevant, where for a time the radical revolutionary forces failed to unite, some having the slogan, after Hitler, us, which tragically became, after Hitler, the concentration camps. Dismiss this as hyperbole, argue that it hasn't happened yet, so it won't. Tell yourself reassuring tidbits of history about all the differences between America in 2020 and Germany in 1933. But be warned here, if you do this and fail to heed the call to join together in the streets now to demand Trump Pence out now, if we fail to find the ways to unite in our great diversity in 60 days of struggle this fall, well, then you will bitterly learn how it actually did happen in Germany in 1933. And there's a more underlying question. What country, what world will humanity wake up to in February 2021? If it is a fascist world, which is what is coming if we don't rise up in nonviolent, sustained mass protests to drive out the Trump-Pence regime, then all your reasons, all your rationalizations and excuses will evaporate like a drop of water in the hot sun. And the hot sun will be the rule by those who are changing the rules, those who rule only by force and terror, those who are committed and determined white supremacists enforcing a racist genocide, those who are Christian fascists insisting that women and LGBTQ people get back, those who terrorize and put immigrants in concentration camps. September 5th showed that such a course is not necessary. There is a way forward. And to each and every person who came out on September 5th, and to all who are watching or hearing about this today or anywhere else, know this. You and all of the 1,700 who came out did so in recognition of the danger we face and in defiance of the prevalent thinking that all we can do is vote and wait to see if Trump loses, steals, or defies the election, let alone that he could actually win the election, with this possibility made stronger if we are not mobilized while the Trump fascist forces rampage around the country. Look, we know that being the first out and doing so in the face of all the reasons given to not do so is not easy. But you stepped out of your comfort zones because you recognized that it mattered. And now others can and need to follow in your path. So now each of us needs to reach out and bring others forward. And go to the websites refusefascism.org and also go to the website revcom.us to get the orientation, the argument, and the materials to bring forward others right now. Go to those sites which amplify what you saw in the opening video today of people of different backgrounds coming together, people who think that science and reality matter, that justice matters, and that all those who came out from different struggles, saving the environment from extinction, saving Black and brown lives, immigrant, women's, LGBTQ rights, people fighting for various reforms, and the RevComs like myself working to prepare today for the time when we could make an actual revolution. All of these concerns and causes that affect humanity joining together in recognition that the continuation of the Trump-Pence regime, that the consolidation of fascism will bring disaster not just to these causes, but to the entirety of humanity. Everyone is needed now. Not just when the shit hits the fan, because first of all, it has already done so. If the blatant murder of people protesting for Black lives by MAGA fascist vigilante does not wake and shake you to the real and present danger we face, well then take your pulse. The people really do have the power. And I will repeat that it is on each and all of us to do all we can to arouse, to inspire, and to organize all of that into a mighty torrent starting now, 60 days of struggle, so that going into the election, our side has the initiative, so that whatever the Trump-Pence regime does, there is a powerful movement in the streets that has forged the ways to work in concert with each other, and that we will be prepared to mobilize with even greater determination should Trump refuse to leave office. On September 5th, we carved open a path to stop the great calamity that the continuation and consolidation of the Trump-Pence regime would mean. This path needs to, and it can, grow to millions. And that is possible because there are millions of people who feel that the horror of this regime must be over. Now, I want to close this commentary with the following from the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian in a statement that he made soon after the murder of George Floyd on June 1st, 2020. He said, "We need a world without white supremacy and male supremacy, a world where no one is regarded as alien, a world without war where people from all over the globe with a beautiful flowering of diversity act together for the common good and are truly caretakers of the earth." He said, "This is not just a dream. The possibility for this is powerfully demonstrated in this uprising of the people of all different races and genders from all parts of the world, refusing to remain silent or stay passive while all the suppression and brutality goes on." And this was said by Bob Avakian right after and right in the midst of the massive uprising we saw in June. So look, the struggle that we face, everyone faces, and we in Refuse Fascism are taking responsibility to lead. The struggle over the next period is a crucial part of making this vision real. Ultimately, to realize that kind of world would take an actual revolution. And I want to say for myself and others that we who work for that revolution are all in fighting today with all we've got to drive out the Trump-Pence fascist regime. And I want to join with everyone who's listening to this webinar and everyone you know, you should be able to say to everyone and to make it known throughout society that in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. So thank you, and let's get on with the webinar.
Thank you, Andy, so much for that. You know, there are millions that were represented. Even though those millions were not yet in the streets on September 5th, there are millions for whom, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America is real and it needs to be acted on. And so tonight, what we want to get into is how those of us who are tuning in, who are already acting to demand Trump Pence out now, can go out to work right away alongside all of those who came into the streets on September 5th and bring forward growing numbers of people to demand in the streets now, Trump Pence out now. You know, we've talked about these 60 days. What are they? And what they are people acting together with determination, with courage, taking a variety of actions, creative actions, actions with new networks of people that are being developed. And each action that they're taking, building more momentum and growing more people, expanding cores that are acting together across the country in concert with the understanding that they hold the future in their hands, that our power is in the streets, and that our power is acting now. And so what we're going to do in the course of the next couple weeks together is we are going to clearly mark where people of conscience should be and be a clarion call for others who want to end this nightmare so that they know where to be and how to join. And making a collective impact that can reach all of society. We're talking about millions of people in the streets day after day. And for that to happen in the not so distant future, we need sustained protests in October. And that means we need to be acting now. We need to be in the streets now. People came forward and many of them are looking for what to do. There's young people who want to be in the streets, who know that we can't sit back and wait. And we have to give them a way to meaningfully make this demand with others. This past week has presented with many jolts to people's very soul and the need to seize these moments with this demand and with this movement to drive out this regime, to model the kinds of protests and resistance that's needed, to gather more people. And so it's in this context that I'm gonna share some things that we're calling for nationally, but also I just wanna say this again, throughout all of this, people should be thinking about the creative ways that they can take action. With this demand, Trump Pence out now, with the understanding in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America, with the feeling that is in the pledge to resist from Refuse Fascism of uniting in our millions, rising together in nonviolent resistance to stop a great horror. With all of that, people coming up with, including tomorrow, ways that they're gonna get in the street. Maybe it's banner drops, maybe it's die-ins, maybe it's speak outs, but really putting this into people's hands, especially new people who are coming forward, finding out what their ideas are, finding out what their talents are, and getting them moving right away, all geared at pouring into the streets in our millions with this demand to oust this regime. So there's gonna be a couple things that I'm gonna lay out. One, and I'm gonna do it in order of chronological order, I think. One is this upcoming Wednesday, September 16th. We are calling for nationwide gatherings to indict Trump for inciting and defending murders by fascist mobs, commemorate the fallen, drive out the Trump-Pence regime. And I'm gonna read this call for these protests, which you can find on refusefascism.org. And I want everybody who's tuning in to be thinking about, where are you going to do this in your city, in your town? And how are you going to bring in the people that you just met this past Saturday? And how are they going to connect with not only their networks, but project out into society that these actions are happening, and gear up in a way that can really make a big impact, not just in your city, but nationwide. So I'm gonna read this, and then I wanna just highlight something really quick, and I'm gonna bring in Paul Street to help me with that. So again, Wednesday, September 16th, that's next Wednesday, nationwide gatherings to indict Trump for inciting and defending scores of murders by fascist mobs, commemorate the fallen, drive out the Trump-Pence regime. Trump accuses protesters of violence, brands them as terrorists, and wants to lock them up for life. But it is Trump who has continually encouraged police to take retribution against protesters. Yes, he said that. In regard to their treatment of Black and brown people, has incited police in speech after speech to be tougher, to not be so nice, and all kinds of inflammatory stuff. It is Trump supporters who have carried out murder and slaughter. The fascists hope their violence terrorizes people into compliance with the nightmare they are fighting to lock in place through a second term of the Trump-Pence fascist regime. The opposite must be true. We will never forget the 11 slaughtered at the Tree of Life Synagogue, the 23 massacred in El Paso by a shooter targeting Latinos, the numerous Muslims murdered, the escalated police violence and murder of Black and brown people, the cruel deaths of immigrants at the border and in detention, and more. We celebrate and commemorate the at least 15 heroes who gave their lives while standing up for Black lives and for justice generally. Their lives will not be in vain. That the full number of lives lost is still unknown is itself an indictment of the normalizing of fascist violence. And this, I want to underscore, is the most fundamental part of this call. Most of all, we will come together to fill their shoes and go even farther, overcoming fear and uncertainty, uniting from many different perspectives, rallying others to join us in mass, sustained, nonviolent protest that does not stop until the Trump-Pence regime has been driven from power and its whole fascist program brought to a halt. This needs to have the spirit, and this, what I just read, can be found at refusefascism.org and should be in the chat on Facebook and Twitter. This should have the spirit of when one of us falls, 100 take their place. That we are taking the streets, that we are bringing millions with us, that we are going to march and go through communities that rouse the people to join us. And that the next time we come out even bigger and we come out even stronger. That instead of this terrifying the people, instead of this tragedy being paralyzing, we are doubling our determination to stop this fascist regime and program. And it is in that spirit that we should involve lots of artists, that people should write about these heroes, that people should create music and poetry. All of this geared for enabling scores of new people to step up and be part of raising the demand Trump-Pence out now, and mobilizing growing of numbers of people to take that courageous act and to act with that conviction that we won't stop until this regime is driven from power. Now is the time to connect with those people who we met September 5th, who we gave a palm card to on September 5th, who we gave a stack of stickers to on September 5th. To connect with them, but to give them a meaningful way to act, to bring thousands more into the streets. If we wait till October, not only will they not be there, but this fascist program will be further down the march. We can't allow another day of this to be normalized without scaling up and building the muscle of this movement to drive this regime from power. I want to give Paul Street an opportunity, who's done some of the research on some of the individuals that we're commemorating, to share a few of these stories and any ideas that he wants to add to having this be not memoriams, but dedication and commitment ceremonies that get people geared up to take this fight all the way to the ousting of this regime, so that there are no more deaths at the hands of this fascist Trump-Pence regime. So Paul, if you can join us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. We have some good friends at Counterpunch. And tomorrow I will have a piece in there that I recommend everyone here read. It's going to be titled 14 Martyrs. 14 Martyrs in the Struggle Against Racist Terror and Trumpism, Fascism. And I think what I'll do is mention some of the names and the locales that they're from. I've done some very unpleasant and rather complicated research. Homicide is tricky and ugly. And I've isolated 14 cases since the George Floyd rebellion that can be legitimately considered people having been shot down for the sin of having stood up to racist terror, police violence, and Trumpism, fascism. So why don't I mention some of those names? just to get the people started on looking for who might be in their locale. And this is in some chronological order. James Skurlock, 22-year-old black male, Omaha, Nebraska. That was on May 30th, 2020. Dorian Murrell, 18-year-old black man, shot to death by a white man in Indianapolis, in Indiana. These are some names that we're going to want to be saying. Say the names. Jorge Gomez, 25, shot by 4 police officers in Las Vegas, June 1st. David McAtee, a very unusual case, a barbecue owner, black male in Louisville, Kentucky, June 1st. A case nobody knows about, Italia Marie Kelly, Davenport, Iowa, along the Mississippi River on June 1st. Sean Monterosa in Vallejo, California, outside San Francisco, in early June. Robert Forbes, 55-year-old black man killed by a vehicle, Bakersfield, California, early June. Tyler Girth, 27-year-old white male, documenting protest in Louisville, Kentucky in July of this year. Summer Taylor, 24-year-old white female, killed on Interstate I-5 by a speeding car on July 4th. Garrett Foster, white male, flat out shot down by a U.S. Army sergeant, fascist Trump fan named Daniel Perry in Austin, Texas, July 25th. And of course, most recently, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I believe the date was August 25th. And we now have the case, and this is the one that I have in all of them, that's a flat out paramilitary police state hit. And I'm talking about Michael Forrest Reinl, I don't know how to pronounce his name actually, who was killed by fascist militaries just last week in Portland. Of my victims that I found, my martyrs, my 14 martyrs, 6 were black, 6 were white, 2 were Latino, 12 were male, 2 were female. The killers, in 3 cases, somewhat indeterminate, angry white males. The killers are always white males, and it's almost always white males. 2 were white cops. 1 was the Kentucky National Guard. We have 2 cases of automobiles. There's been a lot of cases of cars driving into people and maiming them, and in 2 cases, killing them. White property owners stepping outside their properties and blasting guns at people that they think are about to loot them were 2 cases. Full-on fascist vigilantes, 3 cases. The two in Kenosha with Kyle Rittenhouse, who Trump is defending. The old, big top dog fascist defending the 17-year-old teeny bopper fascist in Kenosha, and then 1 federal military case. So I don't want to go any further with the social science demographics and all that, but I would like to read, if that's okay, Samantha, a section from the introduction to the piece I'm doing, because I think it frames this. Okay, good. And this is the intro. The wannabe fascist dictator Donald Trump, his personal attorney general William Barr, and the rest of the broader right-wing United States political and propaganda machine absurdly portray the remarkable anti-racist and anti-police violence protest wave that arose across the nation since the lynching of George Floyd as, quote, radical left terrorism, unquote. A federal whistleblower has just reported that the Trump administration ordered the Department of Homeland Security this summer to suppress reports of right-wing terrorism and play up supposed cases of, quote unquote, left-wing terrorism. So let's be clear about who the real terrorists have been and who has been harmed by political terrorism this summer. The main perpetrators have been white gendarmes and vigilantes, some clearly motivated by the hateful and paranoid rhetoric of the nation's virulently racist president and his white nationalist cohorts. The primary victims have by far and away been civil rights and social justice protesters. 14 of these victims have so far paid the ultimate price, dying in the line of anti-racist and anti-fascist citizen duty in the streets of the United States. Let us pay homage to these martyrs in the struggle for social justice, racial equality, and human rights. We must honor their sacrifice and show that they did not die in vain by fighting to stop Donald Trump and his backers and collaborators from consolidating fascist white supremacist rule in the world's most powerful and dangerous nation. And if this was a speech instead of an article, I'd be saying Trump, Pence, out now. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute there, Paul. Thank you so much. Myself, I just wanted to underscore again a couple points regarding these events. We are calling for Wednesday, September 16th. That's this upcoming Wednesday. Nationwide gatherings to indict Trump for inciting and defending scores of murders by fascist mobs. Commemorate the fallen. This is really important, this part. Drive out the Trump-Pence regime. And we're sharing these stories of those who were murdered with the orientation of rallying people to step forward, to take on and defeat this fascist program and drive out this fascist regime. And in the coming weeks, we're not just continuing to take to the streets, but we're involving everyone we have met and everyone we meet at every point going forward to make plans aimed at impacting thousands, impacting millions, to gather even more people, to have even greater impact, to gather even more people. We're not just going to keep organizing and everyone we meet to be in the streets, but we're going to be on a mission together. All of us who are watching live and all of us who tune in later, to impact all of society, to be in the streets of every corner, every town, and do actions together aimed at growing and growing and growing to get into a different place by October. And then by November, even greater numbers of people in the streets demanding this regime's immediate ouster. I just want to say one more thing. I'm looking at the comments. I'm looking at the comments on social media just to see if anything came in. Please, if you have plans for Wednesday, please make sure that they get posted, because this is part of how we're involving more people. People need to know about these plans. On refusefascism.org, there's a way for you to post your plans and tell the world where you're going to have these actions on Wednesday. And then let's go out and contact all those people and find out their ideas about what we can be doing tomorrow, this weekend, to rally more people into the streets and find out their ideas on how to do it. So Wednesday, I should say Tuesday in Philly, and everybody that's around the Philly area should get to Philly and be part of protesting Trump's town hall. And it should be national news, that while he's having his town hall, thousands are in the streets demanding this regime's ouster and talking about organizing for mass sustained protests, refusing to accept a fascist America. So you should find more information on Refuse Fascism social media about that. So those are two important nodal points. And then I want to say that there's one more date, and then there's ideas that people can contribute to in terms of how we really make these impactful. September 21st, in cities and towns across the country, we're calling for March Against Death, Lies, and fascism and for humanity, demanding Trump Pence out now. Where we're calling on people, this will be right after the horrific milestone of 200,000 deaths is reached. It's probably likely or more than 200,000 at that point. 100,000 approximately are due to deaths caused by this science-hating lunacy of this fascist regime. This is even more urgent with what's been come to light through the Woodward revelations around him suppressing the truth and that being recorded. And people knew it. People knew it on some level, but they're knowing it on a different level. That we're talking about not incompetence. We're talking about genocidal implications that is totally in line with his white supremacist program. That's totally in line with the rest of the package of theocracy and cruelty and hatred of science and objective truth. It's really important that everybody that is outraged about this, that is talking about Trump new, understands that it's up to them to fight for this. That yes, he knew, yes, he lied. The question is, why is he still in power? Why have we not driven him out yet? And we need to answer that in the streets. So September 21st, it's a Monday. We have the potential to bring out and involve healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, people who work in elder care settings, physical therapists, occupational therapists who work in those settings who've been exposed, people in the neighborhoods, people that are in organizations that do work with nurses, but also work around science, educators, Latino and Black communities, other groupings who have been involved in exposing this. There might be local journalists who want to speak out on this as well. All those who have been disproportionately impacted, but also everyone. We should bring a sharp indictment against the deliberate deceit and the cost in lives, highlighting the over 200,000 in this country alone, with at least, as I said, 100,000 attributed to the vicious neglect. And between now and then, there is a lot that can be done to build for this and to build this movement, Refuse Fascism, a movement aimed at driving out this fascist regime through mass sustained nonviolent protests. And there's some ideas we have on this, and there's some ideas that you're going to have. September 19th, which is a Saturday that comes right before, could be marked with banner hangs in dramatic settings on Trump properties or other iconic places. Actions that connect the blood on Trump's hands and the demand, Trump Pence out now. Light projections in major cities, flashing stop Trump genocide, Trump Pence out now, no fascist USA, get in the streets and stay. Connecting people up with refusefascism.org. There could be actions in Times Square or in LA, the Trump Star, other places that are significant in your city, town, or community. Mass burials with body bags, bringing body bags as we've done before to Trump properties, bringing more people out. Having people line the White House with body bags. And then on Monday, coming out all together. In certain areas, this might take the form of nonviolent civil disobedience at PM rush hour. People should be thinking about visuals that get both at the urgency of this stop everything moment and the demand, Trump Pence out now. People should be planning what they should do and involving all of those that they've met in deciding that. Everyone who came out on September 5th reflects the potential for whole blocks of people, whole sections of society, if we reach and impact very broadly. There are millions like them potentially, but we need to reach them, and we need to give them a way to act right away. We need to do it in a way that mobilizes and wields as a force to impact nationally and gather up more people to make even bigger, greater impact, all geared at driving out this Trump-Pence fascist regime through sustained, day after day, ultimately, nationwide protests. In doing all of this, building momentum, mobilizing more people, we should make plans that use the simplest means to have the greatest impact, that allows for the involvement of the greatest number of people, including people very new to this struggle, including people with viewpoints different than yours, but united in the demands. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. Trump Pence out now. I just want to encourage people to not let their plans get more overly complicated in a way that takes up too much time and requires unnecessary specialization that very few people can take part in. Every task, every need can be a way to involve people. And every person that steps forward should feel that they have a place in this movement and a meaningful way to act. And I want to repeat some of these nodal points again, and then take a look at the chat briefly. I want to repeat, Wednesday, we're going forward with nationwide gatherings to indict Trump for inciting and defending scores of murders by fascist mobs, commemorating the fallen and driving out the Trump-Pence regime. People should be taking actions tomorrow, this weekend, to build for those, and building for September 21st in cities and towns across the country, marching against death, lies, and fascism, and for humanity. Demanding Trump Pence out now. And people should be taking a lot of initiative and coming up with creative ideas between those nodal points, before those nodal points, and right away. And in all that you do, share your ideas, share your plans, engage with us on social media, call the national office, send us emails. We want to hear from you as part of building this. And I want to bring in Sansara Taylor, another co-initiator of Refuse Fascism, before we close out.
Hi, can you hear me?
Beautifully.
Beautifully. Well, first of all, I won't be long because we've been on the Zoom, on the webinar for an hour now, and a lot has been said. I really appreciate the plans that you just laid out. I just wanted to take us back to close out to where we began. That now it's really on. We launched something on September 5th. We did that together. It sent a message to the world. It showed a very real and living potential. But the Trump-Pence regime is moving very fast and very aggressively, and there is a showdown coming. November, they are working to sabotage an election, to terrorize people away from the polls, to carry out violence if they need to maybe cancel or postpone, or maybe to actually win the election, or to maybe lose the election but stay in power anyhow. The people have to have our strength realized. It cannot be potential at that point. We have to have forces non-violently in the streets in massive numbers. That's the goal. That's what we're all collectively responsible for. And that's what the plans that Samantha was just laying out have to contribute to, and other plans that people come up with and forge together. And if most likely, it'll be on past November 3rd. All the way, the man is still in power till January by even quote unquote legitimate regulations. We want to drive him out before then. We want to not have that be the case, but we have to fight this to win it for humanity. So I just wanted to pull us back to that. We have a very precious beginning that we have forged, but everything we do has to be aimed at getting us in front of millions and struggling with millions to get off the sidelines and join this fight right now. And so Samantha emphasized these nodal points coming up. Wednesday, a fighting, spirited dedication to go and commemorate those who've been fallen, indict the fascist regime, and call forward more people to struggle so they don't get to own the future. We want to do nationwide. Chicago chapter came up with this 200,000 death count commemoration. We want to make that nationwide so that we actually impact. We want to be on CNN that night, MSNBC that night, gathering people, and not just the COVID deaths, but the fascist science denialism, the program, the way this is targeting Black and Latino people, especially, all of what's concentrated in this fascist agenda. And other actions that chapters come up with and that we inspire people to take up with us to get us in position to not let them take the future. In the video that we began with, and people should use that as a tool to spread around, there was a young man with a mask on who said, people are going to ask us, what did we do? He said, I can feel it's a tipping point. Trump has his vigilantes out there killing people, killing protesters, and he's cheering for them. They are preparing and moving fast for a showdown, and this is what we have to be preparing for and making leaps at every point. So it's not just, this is where I'm going to end, it's not just to organize the people we've met to do things that we've done before on a bigger scale. It's actually take everything we've got to make leaps to new plateaus and then leaps again. And that's the idea of these national nodal points. Next Wednesday, on the 19th, actions that really put this in the public eye, get this seen, this demand, Trump, Pence out now, join the fight now in front of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And then on is it the 21st or the 22nd, Samantha? Uh-oh, she's muted. I'm asking for help. Okay, either the 21st or the 22nd. It'll be on, oh, it's the 21st. She told me. Thank you. On the 21st, it's Monday, after Rosh Hashanah, nationwide protest to indict the fascist regime for killing people with COVID and denying science and their whole fascist program, and to gather more people to make a national impact to then go forward on an even greater level. In the videos you saw, the future, October must belong to us. This is part of getting in position so that that can be real. October has to be gathering like a snowball. And then November, we have to have a lot more to show for it. It cannot be potential. So that's what these plans are aiming for. That's the aim that everybody has to be working to realize as you take these up and as you come up with more ideas and feed them in. So we're in this together. We'll do another webinar soon. We're going to keep working on this together, but let's really go all out and move people with all we've got. I think that Samantha's telling me we should close out the webinar. So on behalf of Samantha, on behalf of the whole National Editorial Board of Refuse Fascism, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and say goodnight.